I came back from a 12-hour work shift, only to find my bags on the sidewalk with a note. "Want to live here? We only have the garage. Signed, your daughter-in-law." I smiled. I had been expecting this. Before the taxi arrived, I made one simple call that made the shrew burst into tears. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Beverly. I'm 67 years old, and I've been a registered nurse for 43 years. I thought I knew everything there was to know about human cruelty after 4 decades of working in hospitals, watching families tear each other apart over inheritance, watching children abandon their dying parents, watching spouses betray each other in their darkest moments. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what my own daughter-in-law would do to me. I pulled into the driveway of what I still foolishly called home after a brutal 12-hour shift at St. Mary's Hospital. My feet were screaming inside my white nursing shoes. My lower back felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, and all I wanted was to collapse into my bed and sleep for the next 10 hours. At 67, these double shifts were becoming harder to handle, but the hospital was short-staffed, and I'd never been one to abandon my patients when they needed me most. The first thing I noticed was wrong was the silence. Usually when I came home this late, I could hear the television blaring from the living room where my son Marcus would be watching his sports highlights, or I'd catch the sound of Lillian's voice echoing through the house as she talked on the phone with one of her friends, complaining about something or someone. Tonight, there was nothing. Then I saw them. 3 battered suitcases sitting on the front lawn like discarded trash, and a small overnight bag I recognized as my mother's old luggage that I'd kept in the hall closet. My heart started pounding, but not from surprise. Deep down, I think I'd been expecting this moment for months. I parked the car and walked slowly toward the suitcases, my nursing bag still slung over my shoulder. A small white envelope was taped to the handle of the largest suitcase, and I could see my name written across it in Lillian's perfectly curved handwriting. She'd always been proud of her penmanship, another one of those little superiorities she held over everyone else. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, though the trembling wasn't from fear. It was from a rage so pure and cold that it felt like ice water running through my veins. "Beverly," the note began, no dear or even mom, which was what she'd called me for the first few years of her marriage to my son. "We've decided that this living arrangement isn't working anymore. If you want to continue living here, we have the garage available. It's weatherproofed and has electricity. We think this would be better for everyone involved. We'll discuss the rent later. Lillian." I read the note twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into my pocket. For a moment, I just stood there on the lawn, looking at this house that I'd helped pay for, this house where I'd lived for the past 8 years since my husband died, this house where I'd cooked thousands of meals, cleaned countless messes, and babysat my grandchildren while Marcus and Lillian went out to enjoy themselves. The garage. She wanted me to live in the garage like some unwanted piece of furniture they couldn't quite bring themselves to throw away. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue when Lillian made her little comments about how I did things differently in the kitchen. I remembered the Christmas morning when she'd unwrapped the expensive jewelry set I'd bought her with my nursing salary and said, "Oh, Beverly, you really shouldn't have spent so much. We're trying to teach the children about being modest with money." Then she'd proceeded to show off the diamond bracelet Marcus had bought her that cost 3 times as much. I remembered the evening she'd told me that my medical advice wasn't needed when her youngest daughter Emma had a fever that wouldn't break, because mothers know best. Even though I'd been treating sick children longer than Lillian had been alive. Emma ended up in the emergency room 6 hours later with pneumonia, but mostly, I remembered last month's dinner party, when Lillian had introduced me to her book club friends as Marcus's mother who helps out around the house. Not as a registered nurse, not as someone with a college degree and 4 decades of professional experience, but as hired help who happened to be related to the family. I smiled then, standing there on the lawn with my life packed into 3 suitcases. I actually smiled, because for the first time in months, everything was crystal clear. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed a number I'd programmed in weeks ago, back when I first started suspecting this day would come. The phone rang twice before a professional voice answered. Sunset Gardens Apartments. This is Maria. Hello, Maria, I said, keeping my voice steady and calm. This is Beverly Thompson. I'd like to confirm my move-in date for apartment 215. I believe we discussed tomorrow morning? Of course, Mrs. Thompson. Everything is ready for you. Will you still need our moving service? I looked at my 3 suitcases and smiled wider. No, thank you. I think I have everything I need right here. As I hung up the phone, I saw a curtain twitch in the front window of the house. Lillian was watching, probably expecting me to break down, to beg, to promise I'd be a better houseguest. She was probably already planning how she'd graciously allow me back inside after I'd learned my lesson about being grateful for their generosity. She had no idea that the lesson was about to begin, and it wasn't going to be mine. The taxi arrived 15 minutes later, and as the driver loaded my suitcases into the trunk, I took one last look at the house. Tomorrow, I would start putting my plan into motion. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully for the first time in months, knowing that I was finally free to be exactly who I'd always been underneath all that forced gratitude and swallowed pride. Lillian thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally gotten rid of the inconvenient mother-in-law who cramped her style and reminded everyone that she wasn't the only woman in Marcus's life. She was about to learn just how wrong she was about everything. As the taxi pulled away from what used to be my home, I caught a glimpse of Lillian in my peripheral vision. She was standing at the living room window, her silhouette framed by the warm yellow light spilling from inside. I could imagine the satisfied smile on her face, the way she was probably already mentally redecorating my room, turning it into the craft space she'd been wanting for months. She thought she'd executed the perfect plan. Clean, simple, with just enough cruelty to make her point while maintaining plausible deniability if anyone questioned her methods. After all, she'd offered me the garage. She wasn't throwing me out completely. She was just establishing proper boundaries, reorganizing the household hierarchy, making sure everyone knew exactly where they stood. What Lillian didn't know was that I'd been watching her just as carefully as she'd been watching me. And what I'd discovered over the past 6 months would have shocked even my most cynical nursing colleagues. It started in March, about 4 months ago, when I came home early from a shift that got cut short due to low patient numbers. I'd used my key to enter through the back door, not wanting to wake anyone if they were napping. The house was quiet, but I could hear Lillian's voice coming from the home office upstairs, the room that used to be Marcus's den before she converted it into her personal workspace. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just heading to my room to change out of my scrubs when I heard her mention my name. Something in her tone made me freeze on the staircase. "I'm telling you, Sandra, she's becoming impossible to live with," Lillian was saying, her voice carrying that particular blend of exasperation and martyrdom she'd perfected over the years. Marcus feels so guilty about it, but honestly, I don't know how much longer I can handle having her here. I gripped the banister, staying perfectly still. "The worst part is how she acts like she knows everything about everything," Lillian continued. "Last week, she had the audacity to correct me in front of the children about their bedtime routine. In front of my own children, Sandra. Can you imagine?" What she was referring to was the evening I gently suggested that maybe 8-year-old Emma shouldn't be drinking caffeinated soda right before bed, especially since she'd been having trouble sleeping. Apparently, basic child development knowledge was now considered overstepping boundaries. And don't get me started on the money situation. Lillian's voice dropped to what she probably thought was a whisper. "She acts like she's contributing so much with her little nursing job, but honestly, the amount she pays us for room and board barely covers the extra utilities and food costs. Marcus is too sweet to say anything, but I can see how stressed he is about the finances." My blood ran cold. The little nursing job that barely covered utilities? I was paying Marcus and Lillian $800 a month for my room and board, which was more than fair considering I was family. But more than that, I'd been covering the children's school lunch accounts when they ran low. I'd paid for Emma's emergency dental work when her filling fell out, and I'd quietly handled the electric bill for 3 months last winter when Marcus was between contracts. But what happened next was what really opened my eyes. "The thing is," Lillian continued, I've been looking into assisted living facilities. Not the expensive ones, obviously, but there are some decent state-run places that would be perfect for someone in her situation. The waiting lists are long, but I have a friend who works in social services, and she thinks she might be able to expedite the process. Assisted living. She was planning to have me institutionalized. I know it sounds harsh, Lillian said, and I could hear her settling into her favorite chair, the one she'd bought with money I later learned came from the joint account I'd been contributing to. But honestly, Sandra, at her age, with her health issues, I mean, she's 67 and still working these exhausting hospital shifts. How long before she has an accident? How long before she becomes a real liability? Health issues. I was in better shape than most 50-year-olds, had perfect blood pressure, and hadn't missed a day of work due to illness in over 2 years. But I was 67, which in Lillian's mind apparently made me 1 foot in the grave. Marcus would never agree to it if I brought it up directly, she continued. But if I start planting the right seeds, mentioning little incidents here and there, maybe even documenting some memory lapses or balance problems, she was planning to gaslight my own son into believing I was incompetent. That was the moment I decided to start my own documentation project. Over the next 4 months, I began paying attention to things I'd previously dismissed as quirks or minor character flaws. I started noticing patterns that, with my medical training, I probably should have spotted earlier. I noticed that Lillian's college degree, which she'd mentioned was in business administration from State University, was never actually displayed anywhere in the house. When I casually asked about it one day, she claimed she'd lost the diploma in a move years ago and hadn't bothered to get a replacement. I noticed that despite supposedly having a business degree and years of management experience, Lillian had never held a job during the entire 8 years I'd known her. Marcus supported the family entirely, often working overtime and taking on extra projects to make ends meet. I noticed that Lillian received a lot of packages delivered to the house, expensive cosmetics and clothing that she claimed were samples or gifts from friends. But I also noticed that she was very careful about when she opened these packages, always when Marcus wasn't home. Most importantly, I noticed that Lillian had been intercepting the mail for months, always volunteering to bring it in, always sorting through it before Marcus saw it. One Tuesday in July, I volunteered to get the mail myself. Hidden among the usual bills and advertisements was a credit card statement addressed to Lillian Thompson. Thompson was my last name, not hers. She'd taken Marcus's father's surname when they married, but apparently she'd been using my deceased husband's name for financial purposes. I didn't open the envelope, but I did make note of the return address and the fact that it existed at all. Marcus had no idea his wife had credit accounts he didn't know about. The more I watched, the more I realized that Lillian had been systematically isolating me, not just socially, but financially and emotionally. She'd been building a case against me for months, preparing Marcus for my eventual removal from the household. The cruel note about the garage wasn't a sudden fit of frustration. It was a calculated move in a longer game, but Lillian had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed that because I was quiet and accommodating, I was also passive and powerless. As the taxi pulled up to Sunset Gardens apartments, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't measuring my words or second-guessing my actions or wondering if my presence was burden. Tomorrow, I would start phase 2 of my own plan. Tonight, I would unpack my 3 suitcases in my new 1-bedroom apartment and finally get a good night's sleep. The real game was just beginning, and this time, I would be the one setting the rules. My new apartment at Sunset Gardens was everything I needed, and nothing I didn't. A clean 1-bedroom unit on the 2nd floor with a small balcony overlooking a well-maintained courtyard. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and the morning light streaming through the windows felt like freedom itself. I'd been living there for exactly 3 days when my phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and I felt my stomach tighten slightly. This was the call I'd been expecting, the one I'd been quietly preparing for during those 4 months of careful observation. "Mom?" His voice sounded strained, uncertain. "I just got home from work and Lillian told me what happened. She said you just left without saying anything." I settled into the small armchair I'd purchased that morning, a comfortable burgundy piece from a nearby furniture store. Hello, Marcus. How are the children? The children are fine, Mom, but that's not. I mean, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me you were having problems with the living situation? I could hear Lillian's voice in the background, too distant to make out words but close enough to know she was coaching him through this conversation. Did Lillian show you the note she left for me? There was a pause. She said she left you a note explaining the new arrangement. She said you seemed upset about it. The new arrangement, I repeated slowly. Is that what she called it? Mom, look. I know the garage isn't ideal, but it's temporary. We're trying to save money to buy a bigger house, and we thought maybe if we converted the garage into a proper living space. He was lying. Marcus had never been a good liar, not even as a child. His voice always got slightly higher when he wasn't telling the truth, and there was a rushed quality to his words that told me he was repeating something Lillian had scripted for him. Marcus, I said gently, when was the last time you actually looked at our household budget? Another pause, longer this time. What do you mean? I mean, do you know how much money comes into the house each month and where it goes? I could hear shuffling in the background, and then Lillian's voice became clearer. She was moving closer to the phone. Mom, I don't understand why you're asking about money. Lillian handles all that stuff. She's good with numbers. I'm sure she is, I said. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. In the past year, how many times have you had to work overtime or take on extra projects to make ends meet? I don't know. Maybe once or twice a month? But that's normal, Mom. Everyone has to work extra sometimes. And how many times in the past year has Lillian mentioned that money was tight, that you needed to cut back on expenses? This pause was the longest yet. I guess. Pretty regularly, but she's just being responsible, making sure we don't overspend. I took a deep breath. This was where I needed to be very careful. Too much information too quickly would put Marcus on the defensive, but too little, and Lillian would have time to cover her tracks. Marcus, I want you to do something for me. I want you to look at the credit card statements from the past 6 months. All of them. Can you do that? Why would I need to do that? Because your wife has been telling you that money is tight while spending approximately $1,500 a month on cosmetics, clothing, and spa treatments. The silence that followed was deafening. I could picture Marcus standing in his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, while Lillian tried to read his expression and figure out how much damage control she needed to do. That's not. Marcus started, then stopped. Mom, that's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, sweetheart. It's a fact. I've been keeping track. Like keeping track of what? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. Marcus, did you know that Lillian has a credit card account under the name Lillian Thompson? Not Lillian Morrison, but Thompson, as in using your father's surname. I heard what sounded like a chair scraping against the floor. That's impossible. We don't have any accounts I don't know about. Check the mail from the past week. Look for anything from Capital One Financial. The statements usually come around the 15th of each month. More silence. Then I heard Lillian's voice, much clearer now, obviously speaking directly into the phone. Beverly, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing with these lies, but you're hurting this family with your paranoid fantasies. Hello, Lillian, I said pleasantly. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. The apartment is lovely, very peaceful. This is ridiculous, Lillian continued. Marcus, don't listen to her. She's obviously having some kind of breakdown. It's probably stress from working too many hours at her age. Actually, I said, I wanted to thank you, Lillian. Moving out has given me so much free time. I've been able to catch up on some reading. Did you know that identity theft, even within families, is a federal crime? I found some very interesting articles about it online. The silence that followed was different from the previous pauses. This one felt dangerous, charged with the kind of energy that precedes a storm. Marcus, Lillian's voice was sharp now. Hang up the phone. Your mother is clearly having some kind of episode. But Marcus didn't hang up. Mom? He said slowly. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that you should look at your bank statements, your credit reports, and your mail very carefully. I'm saying that the woman you married has been lying to you about more than just household expenses. Beverly, you vindictive old woman. Lillian started, but Marcus must have signaled for her to stop because she went quiet. Mom, I need to go, Marcus said. But I'll look into what you're saying. That's all I ask. And Marcus? The children are welcome to visit me any time. I'm only 15 minutes away, and I have a fold-out couch that's very comfortable. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and waited. I knew that within the next few hours, Marcus would start looking through financial documents he probably hadn't examined in years. He would find the credit card statements, the store charge accounts, the subscription services for expensive beauty products. He would realize that while he'd been working 60-hour weeks to keep the family afloat, his wife had been spending money they didn't have on luxuries she didn't need. But more importantly, he would start to understand that the woman he'd trusted to manage their household had been systematically deceiving him for years. I made myself a simple dinner of soup and salad, then settled on my small balcony with a cup of tea. The evening air was warm, and I could hear children playing in the courtyard below. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw a photo of a credit card statement with a balance of over $8,000. The photo was followed by a message. Found this in her jewelry box. How many more are there? I smiled and typed back, That's just the beginning. Check the mail carefully tomorrow. And Marcus? Look up the requirements for a business administration degree at State University. Ask to see her transcripts. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Now I just had to wait for them to grow. The next few days passed quietly, but I could feel the tension building like pressure before a thunderstorm. I went to work, came home to my peaceful apartment, and waited. I knew that across town, Marcus was probably going through every piece of paperwork in his house, and Lillian was probably scrambling to contain a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond her control. On Friday evening, my phone rang again. My phone. This time, Marcus's voice sounded different. Tired, confused, angry. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I set down the book I'd been reading and gave him my full attention. Of course. Did you know that Lillian never graduated from college? I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that the truth was finally coming out. Sadness that my son was having to learn these things about the woman he'd married and trusted for 8 years. I suspected, I said carefully, but I wasn't certain until recently. I called the registrar's office at State University. There's no record of anyone named Lillian Morrison or Lillian Peterson, her maiden name, ever being enrolled there. Not in any program, not in any year. I waited, letting him process this information at his own pace. The credit cards, Mom. There are 4 of them. 4 separate accounts with a combined balance of over $23,000. She's been paying the minimum balances with money from our checking account, but she listed her occupation as business consultant and used your old address from before Dad died as her business address. Oh, Marcus. She's been buying things, Mom. Expensive things. Designer purses, jewelry, spa treatments, online courses for things like interior design and personal shopping that she never mentioned to me. There are charges for restaurants I've never been to, gas stations nowhere near our house, or anywhere she would normally go. I could hear the pain in his voice, and despite everything Lillian had put me through, my heart ached for my son. I'm so sorry you're having to deal with this. But that's not even the worst part, he continued. I found receipts in her car. She's been meeting someone, a man, regular lunches at expensive restaurants, hotel charges, even a weekend spa trip that she told me was a girl's getaway with her sister. The emotional affair. I'd suspected it, but hadn't been able to prove it. Lillian was too careful about her phone and computer for me to find any direct evidence. But apparently, she hadn't been as careful about covering her financial tracks. Marcus? What are you going to do? There was a long pause. I don't know. The kids. Emma keeps asking where Grandma Beverly is. and I don't know what to tell her. And Lillian, she's been acting strange ever since you left. Paranoid. She keeps asking me what we talked about on the phone, whether you've been telling me lies about her. They're not lies, sweetheart. I know that now. But Mom, there's something else. Something that makes me feel sick to think about. I waited. The nursing home brochures. I found them in her desk drawer, along with printed emails about waiting lists and admission requirements. She's been planning to have you committed for months. Even though I'd overheard that conversation, hearing it confirmed still sent a chill through me. Marcus, she had it all planned out. She was going to convince me that you were having memory problems, that you were becoming a danger to yourself and the children. She even had a list of incidents she was going to claim happened. Falls, confusion, forgetting to turn off the stove. All fake. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Not from sadness, but from relief that Marcus finally understood what kind of person he'd been living with. The worst part is, I probably would have believed her, he continued, his voice cracking slightly. I've been so stressed about money, working so much, that I haven't been paying attention to what was really going on in my own house. If she'd told me you were having problems, I probably would have trusted her judgment. You couldn't have known. But I should have. I should have noticed that the money problems never got better no matter how many extra hours I worked. I should have wondered why she never wanted me to handle the bills or see the statements. I should have questioned why someone with a business degree couldn't find any kind of job, even part-time. I could hear him crying now, and it broke my heart. Marcus, listen to me. You are a good man and a good father. You trusted your wife because that's what people do in marriages. The fact that she violated that trust is not your fault. But what do I do now? How do I fix this? This was the moment I'd been preparing for, the conversation I'd been planning for months. First, you document everything. Every credit card, every false statement, every lie you can prove. You take pictures, you make copies, you keep records. Okay. Second, you change all your passwords, check your credit report, and make sure she can't open any new accounts in your name or the children's names. Right. And third, you decide what kind of life you want for yourself and your children. Do you want to stay married to someone who's been systematically lying to you and planning to institutionalize your mother? Or do you want to start over with honesty and integrity? The silence stretched on for nearly a minute. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. She tried to destroy you, Mom. She tried to make me think you were losing your mind so she could have you locked away. Yes, she did. And all this time, you've been helping us, paying for things, taking care of the kids, working those terrible double shifts to help with expenses while she was spending money we didn't have on her own selfish wants. I did it because I love you and the children, not because I expected anything in return. I know, and that makes what she did even worse. Another pause, then. Mom, can you forgive me? For not seeing it sooner? For not protecting you? Oh, sweetheart, there's nothing to forgive. You're seeing it now. That's what matters. I want you to come home. Marcus, that house will never be my home again. Too much has happened. But I want you and the children to feel welcome here anytime. This is your family too. What should I do about Lillian? I took a deep breath. That's not my decision to make. But I will say this. A person who can lie that easily, for that long, about that many things, that's not someone you can trust to be honest about anything. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony and watched the sun set over the courtyard. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new confrontations, new revelations. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like the grandmother my grandchildren deserved and the mother my son needed. The game was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted. Lillian was about to discover that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous of all. I was leaving the grocery store on Saturday afternoon when I saw her. Lillian was standing next to my car in the parking lot, her arms crossed, her face twisted into an expression of pure fury. She'd clearly been waiting for me, probably following me, and the realization that she was now stalking me sent a chill down my spine. You vindictive old witch, she hissed as I approached with my shopping cart. You couldn't just leave well enough alone, could you? I maintained my composure, continuing to load my groceries into the trunk of my small sedan. Hello, Lillian. I hope you're having a pleasant weekend. Don't you dare act innocent with me. You've been poisoning Marcus against me, filling his head with lies and paranoid fantasies. I closed the trunk and turned to face her fully. In the bright afternoon sunlight, I could see that she looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her makeup was smudged, and there were dark circles under her eyes. This was not the composed, controlled woman who had left me those cruel notes about living in the garage. I haven't told Marcus anything that isn't true, I said calmly. If the truth is poisonous to your marriage, perhaps you should examine why that is. Her face flushed red. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something? This isn't a game, Lillian. This is my son's life. My grandchildren's future. Your grandchildren? She laughed bitterly. You mean my children? The ones you're never going to see again once I'm done with this family? I felt my heart clench, but I kept my voice steady. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Marcus might be confused right now, but he loves me. We have 8 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, a life together. You have what? A sad little apartment and a job that's going to kill you before you're 70? Other shoppers were starting to notice our conversation, slowing down as they passed, their eyes darting between us with barely concealed curiosity. I lowered my voice, hoping to encourage Lillian to do the same. Lillian, you're making a scene. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. Oh no, she said, raising her voice even louder. I want everyone to hear this. I want them to know what kind of person you really are. A bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy, so she makes up lies to destroy his marriage. An elderly couple pushing their cart past us stopped walking entirely, openly staring now. The woman whispered something to her husband, who shook his head sympathetically. You want to know the truth? Lillian continued, her voice carrying across the parking lot. The truth is that Beverly Thompson is a jealous, manipulative liar who's trying to break up our family because she can't accept that Marcus chose me over her. I remained silent, waiting. I'd learned enough about Lillian over the years to know that when she was cornered, she would eventually say something that revealed more than she intended. You think those credit cards prove something? She went on. I was trying to surprise Marcus with a business venture. I was taking courses, networking, building connections. Everything I spent was an investment in our family's future. What kind of business venture requires hotel stays and expensive restaurants? I asked quietly. She faltered for just a moment, but then pressed on. Business meetings, networking events? You wouldn't understand because you've never had any ambition beyond wiping bedpans and following doctor's orders. That stung, but I didn't react. I just watched as Lillian continued to dig herself deeper. And the college thing? So what if I didn't finish my degree? I was learning real-world skills, building real relationships with successful people. A piece of paper doesn't make someone educated. But lying about having that piece of paper does make someone dishonest, I replied. Everything I did was for this family, she shouted, loud enough now that people in the next row of cars were turning to look. I was trying to build something better for us, and you ruined it with your petty jealousy. And the nursing home brochures? I asked. How was planning to have me institutionalized building something better for the family? For the first time since the conversation started, Lillian went completely silent. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She clearly hadn't expected me to know about that particular piece of her plan. That was just research, she stammered. In case you ever needed care, it was responsible planning. Research that involved fabricating incidents that never happened? Creating a false medical history to justify commitment proceedings? The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. The list, Lillian. The one you made of fake episodes you were going to claim I'd experienced. Falls, confusion, dangerous behavior. All of it documented and ready to present to Marcus when the time was right. She took a step backward, bumping into the car behind her. You went through my private papers? You broke into my house? I lived in that house for 8 years. I observed things. I listened. I learned. You had no right. Oh, I had every right to protect myself from someone who was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. A security guard was walking toward us now, probably alerted by other shoppers who were concerned about the increasingly heated argument. Lillian saw him too and tried to compose herself, smoothing her hair and straightening her clothes. "This conversation is over," she said, but her voice was shaking now. "Stay away from my family, Beverly. Stay away from my husband and my children." "They're not just your family," I replied. "And if you try to keep my grandchildren from me, you'll discover that I have more options than you might think." "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled then, the same calm smile I'd worn the night I found my suitcases on the lawn. "It means that a registered nurse with 43 years of experience knows a lot of people. Doctors, social workers, family court judges, people who understand the difference between legitimate concern for a child's welfare and manipulative control." The security guard reached us just as Lillian's composure finally cracked completely. "You can't do this to me!" she screamed. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built." "Ma'am," the security guard said gently, "I'm going to need you to lower your voice. Other customers are complaining." Lillian spun around to face him, her eyes wild. "This woman is harassing me. She's stalking my family and spreading lies about me." The guard looked at me questioningly. I remained calm, my voice steady. "I was simply loading my groceries when this woman approached me. I haven't raised my voice or made any threats." Several other shoppers had gathered at a distance, clearly listening to every word. One of them, an older woman I recognized from my neighborhood, nodded when the guard looked in her direction. "I saw the whole thing," she said. "The blonde lady was already here when the other one came out of the store. She was yelling from the beginning." Lillian's face went from red to purple. "You people don't understand what's really happening here." "Ma'am," the security guard said more firmly, "I need you to calm down or I'll have to ask you to leave the property." "Fine," Lillian shouted. "I'm leaving. But this isn't over, Beverly. This is far from over." She stormed toward her car, fumbling with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them twice before managing to unlock the door. As she drove away, I could see her through the rear window, talking animatedly on her phone, probably calling Marcus to give him her version of what had just happened. The security guard turned to me. "Are you all right, ma'am? Do you need an escort to your car?" "That's very kind, but I'm fine. Thank you for handling that so professionally." As I drove home, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Satisfaction that Lillian had shown her true colors so publicly, but also genuine concern for what this meant for Marcus and the children. A person who could lose control that completely, that quickly, was someone who might be capable of almost anything when she felt cornered. I had a feeling that the real confrontation was still to come. The call came at 6:30 on Sunday morning. I was already awake, sitting on my balcony with my first cup of coffee, watching the sunrise paint the courtyard in shades of gold and pink. When I saw Marcus's name on my phone, I knew that whatever was about to happen would change everything. "Mom?" His voice was raw, exhausted. "Can you come over, please? We need to talk." "Of course, sweetheart. Is everything all right?" There was a long pause. "No, nothing is all right. But maybe it can be." I arrived at the house 20 minutes later to find Marcus sitting on the front porch steps, still in the clothes he'd worn the day before. His hair was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed, and he looked like he'd aged 5 years since our last conversation. "She's gone," he said without preamble as I approached, packed 2 suitcases and left around midnight. "She took some jewelry, some clothes, and about $300 in cash from the emergency fund." I sat down beside him on the steps, the same steps where I'd carried his scraped knees when he was 7, where we'd talked about his first day of high school, where he told me he was going to propose to Lillian 8 years ago. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything she'd done, I knew that Marcus had loved her, or at least loved who he thought she was. "She came home yesterday afternoon after that scene in the parking lot," he continued. "She was hysterical, screaming about how you'd humiliated her in public, how you were trying to turn me against her. She demanded that I choose between you and her. And what did you tell her? I told her that there shouldn't be a choice to make, that a wife who truly loved her husband wouldn't try to destroy his relationship with his mother, that a mother who truly loved her son wouldn't try to manipulate him into abandoning his family. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Marcus. She didn't like that answer. She started throwing things, screaming that she'd given me the best years of her life, that she'd sacrificed everything for this family. And then she said something that I can't stop thinking about. I waited. She said that if I was too stupid to see that you were the problem, then maybe I deserved to lose everything. And then she laughed. Mom. She actually laughed and said that I had no idea how much I was about to lose. A chill ran down my spine. What did she mean by that? I think she was talking about the money. After she calmed down, she went into the office and started making phone calls. I could hear her through the door, talking about accounts and transfers. When I tried to go in, she'd locked the door. Did you check your bank accounts? First thing this morning, she cleaned out the savings account, almost $12,000, gone. I closed my eyes, feeling sick for my son. Marcus, I'm so sorry. But here's the thing, Mom. You know what I felt when I saw that empty account? Relief. I looked at him in surprise. Relief, he repeated. Because finally, I knew for certain who she really was. No more doubt, no more second-guessing myself. No more wondering if maybe I was being too suspicious or too harsh. She showed me exactly who she's always been. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Henderson from across the street was retrieving her newspaper, and the Johnson kids were already out riding their bikes. Normal Sunday morning activities in a normal neighborhood, while my son's life was falling apart. The kids don't know yet, Marcus said. Emma kept asking where Mommy was this morning, and I told her she went to visit Aunt Sarah. But Tommy, I think he suspects something. He's always been more perceptive. How are you going to handle this? Honestly, I don't know. I've never been a single parent. I don't know how to explain to an 8-year-old that her mother chose money over her family. I reached over and took his hand. You don't have to explain everything right now. Children are more resilient than we think. What they need is stability, honesty appropriate for their age, and the assurance that they're loved. Will you help me? I know I have no right to ask after everything that's happened, but… Marcus, you don't have to ask. I'm their grandmother. I'm your mother. Of course I'll help. He squeezed my hand. I need to tell you something else. Something I should have said years ago. I waited. You were right about her from the beginning, weren't you? You saw through her before any of us did. I considered my answer carefully. I saw warning signs, but I also hoped I was wrong. I wanted you to be happy. You tried to warn me, in your quiet way. All those little comments about being careful with money, about making sure I was paying attention to the details. I thought you were just being overprotective. I was being overprotective, but sometimes that's what mothers do. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's going to try to come back, you know. When the money runs out, when whoever she's been seeing gets tired of her drama, she'll come back with tears and apologies and promises to change. What will you do if she does? Nothing. The locks are already changed. I'm filing for divorce on Monday morning, and I'm requesting full custody of the children. My lawyer says that with the financial fraud and abandonment, I have a strong case. You've already spoken to a lawyer? I called him yesterday after she locked herself in the office. I've been thinking about this for longer than I wanted to admit. We were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Emma appeared in her pajamas, her hair sticking up in every direction, looking confused and a little scared. Daddy, why are you sitting outside? Is Grandma Beverly here? Marcus stood up and scooped her into his arms. Good morning, sweetheart. Yes, Grandma came over to have breakfast with us. Emma's face lit up. Really? Can we make pancakes? The kind with chocolate chips? I think that sounds perfect, I said, standing up as well. But we should probably check on your brother first. Tommy's still sleeping. He stayed up late reading. Emma looked between Marcus and me. Is Mommy coming home for breakfast? Marcus and I exchanged a look. Mommy's going to be away for a while, sweetheart. But Grandma Beverly and I are going to take very good care of you. Emma seemed to accept this explanation, already distracted by the promise of chocolate chip pancakes. As we went inside, she slipped her small hand into mine. Grandma Beverly, I missed you. The house was sad when you were gone. I squeezed her hand gently. I missed you too, sweetheart. But I'm here now. Later that morning, after pancakes and after Tommy had woken up and been given a similar explanation about his mother's absence, Marcus and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen while the children played in the backyard. I owe you an apology, he said, for not seeing what was happening, for not protecting you, for letting her treat you the way she did. Marcus, we've already talked about this. No, Mom, let me finish. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you a debt I can never repay. She was going to destroy you, and you saved yourself. More than that, you saved all of us. I shook my head. I just told the truth. You did more than that. You could have exposed her publicly, humiliated her the way she tried to humiliate you. You could have made this ugly and vindictive. Instead, you let her destroy herself. I'm not a vindictive person, Marcus. I never wanted to hurt her. I just wanted to protect myself and my family. And you did. She played her hand too early, showed her true colors before she could do any more damage. Through the kitchen window, I could see Emma pushing Tommy on the swing set, both of them laughing. They would be all right. Children adapt, they heal, they move forward with the resilience that adults often lose. So what happens now? I asked. Now? Now we rebuild. The three of us, and you if you want to be part of it. I know this house has bad memories now, but it's also where the kids grew up. It's home. I considered this. I like my apartment. It's peaceful there, but I think I'd like to spend more time here with you and the children. Maybe not living here, but being part of the daily routine. I'd like that too. My phone buzzed with a text message. When I looked at it, I saw Lillian's name and felt my stomach tighten. The message was short. This isn't over, Beverly. You haven't won anything. I showed the message to Marcus, who read it and shook his head. She still doesn't get it. She still thinks this was some kind of competition. Maybe for her it was, I said. But for me, it was just about survival. I deleted the message without responding. Whatever Lillian chose to do next was her decision, but I wouldn't be drawn back into her games. I'd played by her rules for too long, allowing her to set the terms of engagement. Now I would live by my own principles: honesty, dignity, and love for my family. 3 months later, I was sitting in the same kitchen, helping Emma with her homework while Tommy practiced piano in the living room. Marcus had taken a new job with better hours and better pay, and we'd fallen into a comfortable routine. I spent most weekday evenings at the house, helping with dinner and homework and bedtime stories. Weekends were split between family activities and my own time at the apartment. Lillian had never returned. The divorce had been finalized without her participation, and Marcus had been awarded full custody. We'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved 3 states away with the man she'd been seeing, though apparently that relationship hadn't lasted long either. The children rarely asked about her anymore. They'd adapted to their new normal with the remarkable resilience of youth, and they seemed happier and more secure without the constant tension that had filled the house during Lillian's reign. As for me, I felt free for the first time in years. Free from walking on eggshells, free from second-guessing every word and action, free from the exhausting effort of trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. I'd learned something important during those months of quiet observation and careful planning. Sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is simply refusing to participate in it. Lillian had wanted a war, but I'd given her truth instead. She'd wanted drama and destruction, but I'd offered dignity and fact. In the end, she'd destroyed herself far more effectively than I ever could have, and in doing so, she'd freed all of us to become the family we were meant to be. The house was quiet again that evening as I prepared to leave for my own apartment. Emma and Tommy were asleep, and Marcus was reading in the living room. As I gathered my things, he looked up from his book. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." I smiled and kissed his forehead the way I had when he was small. "Thank you for listening when it mattered." As I drove home through the familiar streets, I thought about the letter I'd never sent, the one I'd written the night after I found my suitcases on the lawn. In it, I'd tried to explain to Lillian why her cruelty had backfired so completely. But I'd realized that some people are simply incapable of understanding the difference between strength and manipulation, between love and control. I'd kept that letter as a reminder, the power of silence, the strength found in truth, and the peace that comes from knowing you've chosen dignity over revenge. Some victories don't require a single battle. Sometimes they simply require patience, wisdom, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.